しいもん渡せるわけないでしょ。緑の方が可愛いのに。
Eh, still better treatment than what the Precure franchise gives that color. We opened this one with Amu slowly making her way to school, so slow in fact that she could hear some of the kids passing by. Wow, I didn't realize that Elon Musk's AI child went to this school. Understandably, she was still stressing out over needing to deal with her two fairies following her everywhere, with the third one inevitably going to hatch soon. To make matters worse, the typical school rumor mill did its thing, and somehow managed to reveal that Amu had turned down her invite to join the Guardians. And honestly, considering what happens at the end of this episode, I think it's very likely that they themselves leaked that intel. More on that when we actually get there, but while Amu was disappointed that her more personal affairs were getting out, she did actually want to interact with her classmates. By the way, you think we should be talking about this stuff while we're near range of her? I honestly don't see a problem with it. Yeah, it's a pretty common catch-22 that many of us likely experience when we try to act too cool for school. We would try to keep up with those appearances, and yet it often would lead us to not being able to share in that coolness with others, because in hindsight we probably really should have figured that lone wolf actually meant being alone. Fortunately, Amu did have some other friends slash stalkers. Yeah, rewatching this series, I'm starting to realize that the Guardians are kind of assholes. In this case, Nadeshiko outright tried to bribe Amu to join them with photos of Tadase, and when that little bit of creepiness didn't work, she instead decided to act as a matchmaker between the two by inviting her to a meeting that they were going to have at his house, and which would just so happen to have the added benefit of buttering her up to join them. And speaking of butter, Nadeshiko suggested that they make a fruit tart as a gift for him. Thus the two made in the home ec room, where I guess the two just had some full-on cooking clothes lying around somewhere. I mean, in Nadeshiko's case, it makes sense since her family is loaded, so she probably has a locker full of kimono for different occasions. But does Amu just have a complete goth loli apron and dress set ready for this occasion? I mean, don't get me wrong, they're both cute outfits that match up well with their characters. It's not every day you see a goth loli cookware, but still, it's just odd for someone who claims to not like cooking to just have this lying around. Or did her mom make her take it because she's just that insane about coordinating everything in her daughter's life, which, okay, maybe that is the case, and if that is, that's kind of creepy. Anyway, Nadeshiko led Amu through the baking process, whilst also giving her a little advice about Tadase. Let me guess, he's not a fan of the former artist?
Purple Rain.
Anyway, they also went into some pretty exact detail about how to make tarts, including weighing it down during the baking process, though I'm pretty sure you're supposed to put like foil or parchment in between to prevent the tart from tasting like the weights, which look like coins in this case. That's some good lead poisoning. Okay, they're probably made from like ceramic, but my point still stands. Regardless, the tart came out well. Nadeshiko went to get some fruits to put on top of it, which you'd think they'd already have on hand while it was baking, but I guess the story needed to set up his arrival. What? You're saying it's not normal behavior for the magical girls to thirst after the older guys? Seriously, of everything in the show, that is one of the few lines that I still remember to this day, just for the simple fact that the kid show character said hentai. But yeah, Ikuto was there to steal Amu's third egg, which he believed was the embryo, which as we learned later in the episode, was something that could grant wishes, and then he proceeded to lick it because I'm sure the Dragon Balls taste good too. No, of course, he was doing it because it was Amu's egg, which, yeah, is already all kinds of creepy without, well, this on top.
No, I reject what this is immediately, no.
Very thankfully, Nadeshiko broke things up before character changing with her partner Temari. Hey, this is just what happens when you Shugo Chara Satsuki Kiryun. Also, Amu, is your kitty apron sentient? As a result of their fight, the tart ended up getting knocked over, though fortunately, I guess, Amu's final egg hatched, revealing her third SC. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Tart has already fallen over like several times over by now. However, she still tried to help by unleashing Ichika's secret stash. Obviously, this didn't actually help in any way, other than, I guess, repelling Ikto, but he was gonna leave anyway since the third egg turned out to be a bust, plus he did end up feeling bad for what he did.
これはひどいわね。せっかく作ったのに。
Not as bad as the mess y'all left in the hallway. On a bit of a side note, this is also where a certain character was introduced in the manga, but they decided to save it for later in this anime, which honestly makes more sense, but again, more on that later. But yeah, understandably, Amu was just as broken up as her Tart. With little time and ingredients left, it seemed like they would have to call it quits, but fortunately, Sue showed off that she did have arguably the most practical skill of Amu's three characters. And thus, they managed to use the leftover tart dough to make some very flaky cookies, I'm guessing, though probably not as flaky as Sue. So, yeah, probably worth mentioning now that Miki is my favorite of Amu's three Shugo Chara. I mean, not only is she the most level-headed and competent of the three, but she also has some rather charming aspects that we'll see later in the series. Meanwhile, Ron is an impulsive ninny who probably causes most of the problems for Amu, and while Sue had probably the most practical skill set, she lives up to having Yuri Hirasawa as her VA. But yeah, on that note, Ron later took over Amu and tried to wrap up her cookies for Tase and included a really cringy little love letter. Understandably, she didn't want to give him that bag, and thus just made a second one. She didn't think to unwrap and just throw away the letter because I guess they needed to have this third act conflict, and when he unexpectedly arrived due to a setup by Nadeshiko, Amu accidentally gave it to him. And after realizing this, she decided to sneak into Tase's room and switch them out.
なんか超ミッション1本絞ってきました。
Don't say that unless you want your movie to bomb at the box office. They found the room and the cookies, as well as Tase's Shugo Chara, Kiseki. His character, if you could tell by his design, was as a pompous king who also gave them the embryo exposition that we mentioned earlier, and while they were listening to him, Tadase showed up. Fortunately, he didn't call the cops on her, as I'm pretty sure they should focus on the cat boy instead, and they just sat down and discussed things like asking what Tadase desired. In the process, Amu ended up calling Kim a prince again. Okay, seriously, kid, was it that one off-kilter joke from Animaniacs that turned you off to him?
No, fingerprints.
I don't think so.
Actually, this is supposed to represent a character change to supposedly his deepest desire, which was world conquest, at least according to the Art Guardians.
なんかみんな、忠瀬君の野望を叶えるために Of course! 面白いから
Every politician and their cabinet in a nutshell. Though, as we later see, after he cooled down, it was more likely that he wanted to be more assertive, and Kiseki just amplified the desire to its most logical extreme. This led to a nice moment where Amu started to realize that she wasn't alone in trying to find her true character, which between Nadeshiko turning into a Yakuza wife, and Tadase turning into a tyrant, we all just kind of go through phases of some exaggerated characters is all. With that, Amu gave Tase her non-love letter cookies, and they shared them with the rest of the Guardians. From there, the episode ended the following day when Tadase had a special announcement.
5人目のガーディアンはジョーカーひなもりアム
When all else fails, just strong arm whoever you need into your ranks. That's some actual cult behavior. I didn't think my joke would go that far. But still, this is a really fun episode. While she was certainly a space case, Sue did have a really fun introduction that even included a spy mission because why not? Nadeshiko also got some good developments that, yeah, will add to some interesting developments for her later. I would assume that these first 3 episodes were, by design, a main introduction arc, with each one debuting Amu's 3 Shugoka. And of the 3, this was easily the funniest, likely because they had gotten most of the other intros and expositions out of the way. As a result, they could show different sides to these characters that we got to know a little, and oh boy did we ever. And yeah, while this was primarily Sue's debut episode, and she is easily Amu's goofiest SC, Tadase and Nadeshiko really managed to steal the show. Not only were their reveals absolutely hilarious, but they did show how there's a lot more to these characters, and while not nearly as exaggerated, also did highlight how people IRL are far more than their surface level. Granted, in Nadeshiko's case, her stuff is a little more complicated, but again, that's a talk for another day. For now though, this is just an overall really fun episode with kind of a fun introduction to a new Shugo Chara and some insane new developments for a couple of others. They say that kids can be ambitious and that should be nurtured to a certain point. Thanks for watching, and if you want to be drowned in whipped cream, well, we won't judge around these parts, but if you're going to do that, could you please watch some of our videos? We've got something new coming out almost every day, and some other longer form projects hopefully coming out soon. Look forward to whatever comes next. Until then, though, for now, my friends, and damn it, that mountain from Kira Kira Pre-Cure burst again. Good thing I bought a fresh case of this stuff.